So we're going to start off here with a little bit of Eastern European jazz, which this particular song is a cover of an early jazz standard written in 1928, and it was not uncommon to hear a band cover. It was the 24th most covered song between 1898 and 1935. Don't ask me how I know that. But it's best not to delve too much into this podcast if you think genres are a definite way to distinguish all the styles that come from various forms of classical and folk, which influence each other quite a bit. It's best not to pigeonhole the Memphis Jug Band as just jug band music. It is a definite sound, but has been used to describe the early 20th century fusions of rural blues, jazz, and folk artists, even without a jug and washboard. Piedmont blues has been given several definitions, along with Delta blues, ragtime blues, country blues, but they all fall under the category of rural blues. And some artists seem to fall under all these categories of rural blues, like Mississippi John Hurt, or Reverend Gary Davis, or Skip James. Blues has swung long before swing. Classical has played 12-bar blues long before blues. And folk has done it all, including the complexities of jazz arrangements of time signatures, key signatures, changing chord progressions, and atonal and semitone usage, and all kinds of various mathematical manipulations of sound that we just tend to love to hear with our ears. So we can't really rely on genre as a key to using, even with real attributes of all genres and subgenres. So I hope you take heed when you hear W.C. Handy and it may sound like jazz, but it's not. Or when you hear Louis Armstrong or Jelly Roll Morton and you call it blues. It's not. You're not wrong, but for purposes of the popular consensus, which we will try to stick to, W.C. Handy is primordial blues mixed with ragtime and marching band. Early Louis Armstrong and Jelly Roll Morton is late stage ragtime blues on brass. It incorporates elements of folk and sometimes throws classical sounds in, especially when you'll see later in this video, which we're going to do a lot of listening on this segment. This genre of Louis Armstrong and Jelly Roll Morton, Dixieland Jazz Band, early Duke Ellington, is referred to generally as hot jazz because it's hot off the skillet, as it had just been popularized by many acts at the time. I highly recommend you seek 2 documentaries out. There's one documentary called Jazz by Ken Burns, and there's another documentary called Martin Scorsese Presents the Blues. They are each several hours long and go fully into depth into both genres. Each, like the jazz goes a little bit into blues and minstrelsies. The blues documentary goes into jazz a lot because they intersect quite a bit in their history because they came from the same people. For the purposes of this segment, we're going to compare a lot of different songs and listen. But as far as Europe and its history of quickly adopting American sounds such as blues and jazz and hillbilly music, from folk to rock and roll, we're only going to cover today that period when records started being made, when jazz standard reflected the folk and parlor tradition, creating a sound that has impacted the very music you hear today, known as pop music. In Eastern Europe, we have a more minor key swing, melodic, being formed as early as the mid-1930s, while Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong were rising to the top with big brass bands. Django Reinhardt, as we heard in the beginning of this video, he stuck to a minimal string band. In Texas, he had Bob Wills creating a western swing band with strings and brass. But in places like Washington, D.C. and New Orleans, there were brass bands. So they were exchanging records transatlantically. And while Eastern Europe had its roots, with Chopin, he's got the March Funèbre. It's a piano sonata that we know as the Funeral March, very similar to the Imperial March in Star Wars. But it's very common to hear a reference audibly of that song because It's been historically associated with death. Looney Tunes and many cartoons had the funeral march played when a character dies and comes back to life later. Like when Sylvester gets murdered or when Tom and Jerry murder each other. It's very common. We have that morbid sense of humor and early minstrel influence comedy. Mad TV and is the most modern example of that. But I'm sure there's more modern examples that I just haven't been exposed to, but that's my most modern example. But anyways, as you hear at the end of Black and Tan Fantasy, there's that reference to Chopin's March Funèbre. And it's funny that they concluded that resolution of a jazz song in the minor swing, early swing, in brass form, and with a verse of a classical piano sonata. And it's kind of neat. It happens a lot in music where a symphony or a jazz piece references another song. We hear it in Dvorak's New World Symphony when he references Turkey in the Straw. I would pull that up, but that symphony is very long, and Turkey in the Straw has some problematic histories that I'd already covered and don't feel like delving more into. So, today, let's enjoy this 12 minutes of listening, apart from this commentary, and I hope you can see the connections that there is no chicken and egg scenario. Europe does not necessarily create jazz, but jazz wouldn't necessarily be the same without it, and vice versa. Europe would not have the same kind of music today without African American influence. It was a big exchange that could arguably be more, impactful than the Greco-Egyptian exchange or any famous exchange of cultures. America and Europe have long coexisted. So between Chopin and Duke Ellington, or between Django Reinhardt and, an American composer of jazz standards, or Bob Wills and Fats Waller, which we'll bring those two up when we talk about Highway 61, the Gulf of Mexico, Chicago, Memphis, and other places along that middle part of America. We'll go from Cajuns to Chicago Blues. That's the standard I'm setting for the next segment of the next episode. And we're concluding this first episode with a lot of listening. So, enjoy.
state of Carolina. It stays and you know her. Sure to me, Dinah, with those Dixie eyes blazing. How I long to sit and gaze into the eyes of Dinah Lee. Every night, why do I shake with pride? Because my dynamite changed her mind about me. Oh, Dinah, said she wanted to China. I would hop an ocean liner just to be with Dinah Lee. Swing it on out to Jackson. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Bye, 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 bye. Oh, Dinah. Is there anyone finer in the state of Carolina? Yeah. If there isn't, you know her. Show her to me, oh Dinah. With your Dixie eyes blazing, how I love to sit and gaze to the eyes of Dinah Lee. Every night, why do I shake with pride? Because my dynamite changed your mind about me. Dinah, if you wanted to China, I would hop an ocean liner just to be with Dinah Lee. Now, Gelso.